Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Marina Perry Podcast. Today I have a really amazing guest and I'm very excited to dive into this topic with him. We have Lino Hola, who is the founder of Men's Medicine, amongst other amazing qualifications. Lino, we've just lost your video, so are you still with us?
I am.
Okay. I'm like, where did it go? Okay, let's try that again. Did you just do something? I'm actually
no, someone tried to call me.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm actually going to close out all my other windows too. So that's funny. Let's go again. Excuse my voice too. I've just been getting over something on the weekend.
You're fine.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I am Marina, your host, and today I have an amazing guest, Lino Hola, who is the founder of Men's Medicine. And we are going to be diving into this very juicy topic this week around men's work. What is it? Why do we need it? And how is it a benefit to everyone? So, Lino, thank you so much for joining today. And can you firstly, before we get into this topic, can you just tell me if there was an animal that best represented your characteristics, your trait, what animal would that be and why?
Well, I'm a bit of a bear.
Ooh.
I'm a bit of a bear. Like I'm big. I'm a bit of a gorilla. I'm a bit of a bear. I'm big. I'm cuddly. I'm strong. But I'm gentle. I'm caring. I'm very protective. Nurturing, nourishing.
That's
all
beautiful.
Of those sorts of things.
Yeah. Do you hibernate? Are you a hibernator at all? Or?
Yes, I do.
Do you do? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You man cave it at times. That's awesome. I love that. And if you could have one superpower, what superpower would you choose to have and why?
Oh, geez. Ridiculous strength. Yes. I always have, I have these dreams, and it's a dream that I've had since I was a kid, and it's where I have the ability to pick up cars and smash them.
So super strength.
I don't know. Yeah, super strength. I don't know why, but that's, something.
That's awesome. I think that there's probably lots of boys who could associate with that dream, and lots of Marvel movies that depict it perfectly. So well done. Okay. Talk to me about men's work and how you came to your story and how you came to found an organization called Men's Medicine. What led you to this creation, this birthing, this movement?
Well, I come from a big family myself. There's 7 boys in my family. I've got 6 brothers, 5 sisters, and I've been personal training for like 15 years. And I guess as a personal trainer, we're dealing with meal plans, training plans, and we're helping people improve their bodies. But I guess through my journey as a personal trainer, after a while, we go through the same cycles each year, helping people lose weight and body transformations. And I guess after a while, you start to wonder why people don't do things. Why won't they stick to their meal plan? Why won't they stick to their programs? And what we really want to do is help people produce results. But what's stopping them from producing those results? And I guess the way that I helped people achieve results wasn't really about the best meal plan or training plan. It was about talking to them about their lives. That's how I helped them achieve their results. By helping them talk about whatever's going on in their life, I found that they responded better with their training or their meal plans and our workouts and our sessions. So eventually that led me down my own personal development journey of NLP, of breathwork, of workshops. And as I went down through that journey, I guess I started to come across these things like breathwork and allowed me to dive deeper into it. And at the time, for the majority of my time as a personal trainer, I predominantly coached women, trained women. Majority of my clients were all females. And after some workshops that I'd done, I guess I was finding when I was interacting with men, my experience was that there was a high tendency of men being in their own ways. Their ineffective patterns and behaviors and the vicious cycles just kept on showing up. And I'm someone who really loves life, love the life that I live, love being a father, love being a husband, and love going on holidays and traveling. And I was, a question came up was, they could only get out of their own way, they could see how beautiful life really was.
Mm.
And that sparked the thought, I need to do something. And it was literally from that thought, I'm like, you know what, even though I coach women, I'm going to do this thing, create something for men so that I can share my life with my friends more. That's literally where it all sort of began. I'm not, otherwise, I'm going to be the only one who's enjoying being a father, enjoying being married, enjoying going traveling. At the time, a lot of my friends, I guess they were still stuck in their partying ways or experiencing, they're struggling with mental health. So I guess I felt called upon to do something. And at that stage, I was like, I'll create a one-day, workshop that'll help them get out of their funk or their own way or overcome whatever stories that they were struggling with. And I'll still coach women.
Yes.
I didn't know that it would be the thing.
Yes.
Once it started, it literally within 30 days, my female client base transitioned over to men. The majority was my client base were women. In 30 days, it was all of a sudden 90% men. And it just went from there.
That's awesome.
So the men's work was birthed out of, I guess, a need that I saw, and I chose to do something.
Yes. Like so many true entrepreneurs, I can relate to so much of your story there, coming from a health and fitness background myself. And I love what you shared there around, because I've noticed this too, and this is why I've taken the tact of moving into coaching and through NLP and breath work and other modalities, because when we focus purely on behavior, which is what we're trained to do as PTs and health professionals, change what you eat, change how you move, and you change your life. Except, as you so accurately pointed out, that's not often the case for a period, perhaps, or some people still really resist those changes. And hence the inner work is so important. So I agree with you on that level. And I love what you said, that you notice that men seem to be even more in their way. Now, I find that interesting because as someone who for 20 years has worked in health and fitness and just over 10 years now inside what I call the inner work or the true transformational space of human behavior, I have noticed, and it often gets mentioned at trainings and workshops and inner work events, there is still a majority of women to men ratio. And every time there are men in the room, we're always like, yes, thank you for being here, brothers, because, the work is, and admittedly, probably the opposite to you, my calling is with the women, because I see how we've over masculinized ourselves, and that was my path. So I just wanted to speak around, and again, when everyone's listening, I'm actually okay if this conversation really talks about men and women, and if we can leave the non-binary conversations for a different place and space, but really talking about people who associate as men and people who associate as women, knowing that masculine and feminine energy is within all of us. I would like to ask you, why do you feel men are slower on the uptake, not in, say, performance? I feel they go for like performance coaching and goal setting, but deep transformational work, and it's not that there's an absence, there's just fewer men in the room. And so that makes me curious. And I feel that that's why movements like yours are so essential. But why is it that they're perhaps more in their way, as you described it?
I think, great question. I think that we don't realize how important it is. We just don't know.
So the value, they don't see the value.
Well, we don't, not even exposed to it.
Yes.
I was never exposed to it until I did my first NLP course. And then the second, and I was like, this is great. I'm going to go do the next one. And then starting to do workshops. And when I got to workshops, I was like, this feels like very at home. But now I have a better understanding on how the mind works. I'm like, okay, I get this. And then once experiencing breath work, that changed everything. And I guess the truth is, until I knew it, I had no idea about this whatsoever. Until I stepped into, I guess, the spiritual side of things, the inner work, I had no idea it even existed. No idea. And I guess the majority of men are probably the same. And that when they come to our space, and I guess once you experience it, you know that it's something that you need.
Yes. Because that experienced is a knowing. I agree with you. I think we definitely don't know what we don't know, right? Which is the block that we're all facing. But I also wonder, and I'm going to kind of pose this as a hypothesis and a question simultaneously. Do you think it's a combination of conditioning? So girls are conditioned, or it's more appropriate societally for girls to chit chat and to talk about feelings and to be a bit more open with the chaos that is sometimes the human condition. Whereas guys, it's kind of like chin up, move on, tough boys don't cry. I wonder if it's a combination of conditioning and then equally an element of the fact that men naturally have more masculinity, which is kind of a bit more strong and straight in the line. So if it's not already in the sights, it kind of needs to be brought in to be witnessed, because otherwise, like, there's no need to change what's not broken, but you don't know what's potentially broken if you don't know what else is out there. So is it a combination of this conditioning and also just biology that is making it perhaps less known to them?
I think so. I think it's definitely everything that you just said. It's a combination of what I just said plus what you just said.
Yeah.
About that. And someone asked me, what do I think is the most common thing amongst people in general? And I said to her that there's not a man or a woman that hasn't come into my space but hasn't had some kind of daddy story. And that what that's highlighted to me is about how important the father role is. And
Can you tell us more about that? Yeah.
I guess fathers that aren't around, fathers that work too much, the breakdown between relationships. A lot of fathers don't know how important their role as a father is. And I guess it's just not even talked about. But coming from my end, where I'm working with men and I'm working with women, that has probably got to be the most common thing. Their conditioning growing up, the way that their fathers have brought them up, or the absence of their father as well. It's one or the other, never knowing their father. And then the same thing for the women. Same thing for the women. It's their experience with men, their experience with their father. And I'm just like, man, fathers have no idea how important their role is as a father in their children's lives and the impact that it has in the community. I've got 2 children myself, and I remember I went and watched my daughter play netball, and I was sitting there watching them play netball, doing training, and I was thinking to myself, I wanted to say something. I wanted to put my 2 cents in, or put my, my advice in, and I'm like, no, sit here, say nothing, watch. You're not the coach, because her mum's actually the coach, and your job is just to be here. And my daughter was just so happy for me to be there. And I think that for women, that the father, and a lot of the time as a father, that's a lot of what your job is. Just being there, showing up is like half the thing. But for men, as you shared before, the masculine, that being so, the testosterone in us makes us want to do something. But often a man feels like he has to do stuff. We had a couple workshop on the weekend, and what the men got to realize is that just being there was more than enough. And they shared about how they always feel like they actually felt like they weren't doing enough.
Yes, men do love to be the heroes, fix things and provide, don't they? Like on a really biological level. And I work deeply with women and our wounds. And it's interesting. I want to pause that though and come back to it. But the one thing I wanted to really piggyback on that you touched on, and I'm glad you did, because I'm a trained family constellations facilitator. So most of my work that I do with my clients ends up going straight into family systems, because we all come from a family and it's generationally inherited, seven lines.
You're speaking my language.
Yeah. And it isn't just daddy wounds, it's mummy wounds, it's all of it. But what I have come to realize is that we will code the relationship we are to the parent. We'll either become a parent if one of the parents is absent. And in addition to that kind of affecting our identity, there are other elements there. Like if you're raised to believe that, your father is your hero, even the willingness to look at it from a really real perspective of, yes, my parents were amazing. Yes, they did the best they could, but you know what? They weren't around a lot, which then led to me becoming independent and unwilling to receive support. Like, it's not about were they good or bad. Every human, I believe, is innately good, made of light and love. And we're all rippling onto each other. And as a result, ricocheting off in different directions. So the work is in coming in and realizing, what did I code about them that may or may not be true that's now affecting me in my day-to-day lives? And in doing that, would you agree, we actually become liberated? It isn't about allocating blame or resentment, or it's really not about that. But I think when you first look at family, sometimes it can feel like you're breaking this holy vow of, thou shalt respect your parents. But you can respect them in their humanity, like respect them in the fact that they were doing the best they could, but they also were children of parents, and they were children of parents. And there's kind of a lot of codes that got brought down. And so by looking at it, you actually do become liberated, and it I feel heals that wound and allows you to relate differently, because there is a lot of pressure on fathers. And even when we say the importance of the father role, they might go, well, shit, now I've got to do even better, and it can feel even heavier. But it's really an opportunity, isn't it, just to expand your identity.
I guess that's never highlighted, that's never shared.
Yes.
That last piece that you just shared there. And as men, as you said before, like we always feel like we've got to do stuff. I've got to be the provider. I've got to be the strong one. I've got to be the leader. I've got to know everything. I've got to have it all figured out.
Yes.
Who said?
Yes.
Who said this?
Well, that's right. Like generations upon generations of monkey see, monkey do. And the number of women and men, I'm sure, who will go, oh, my father didn't love me because he was never around, or he never said it. And then you simply explain to them, but did he go to a job he probably didn't like and work very, very hard for many, many years, painfully sacrificing time with you to put food on the table? That was his language of love. That was how he loved you. And even that can be very healing for people to recognize, don't you think?
That realization that you just shared is probably not realized by the majority of society. I share that. I highlight exactly what you just said there with everyone. Especially, I guess, not until I became a parent myself did I realize, all of those things about my own parents. I'm the third oldest, so I've got 2 older brothers, 5 younger sisters, and 4 younger brothers. So I grew up as, I guess, one of the oldest, or one of the first in our family. And as life went on, things changed, the further down it went. And I guess for us older ones, it was a lot harder. In our culture, the oldest is the one who, I guess, is the most privileged. And I wasn't the oldest, so it was a different story for me. But it wasn't until I was the first in my family to have a child. I've got the oldest and the youngest. My daughter's 14, and my newborn son's only he's 12 weeks this week, and there's 36 grandchildren. So
big family.
There's a big family. It wasn't until I became a parent the second time around as a father, so different to the first time around. But when I became a father, as time went on, I started to realize a lot of things. When I had to do it for myself, I figured, geez, my parents had to do this too. They had to do a whole bunch of things, and that healed a lot for me. And made me realize a lot of things. And I guess a lot of these things you don't realize until you become a parent. And what happens if you don't become a parent? Well, what happens if you're not a parent yet?
Yes. And I was going to jump in and say on that, this is why I think when we talk about inner work, one of the biggest tools, right, in NLP or any kind of transformational work is what we call, the perspective shifts, or the shifting of the locus of the focus, right? So if I can, and it's like 12 Angry Men even wrote about it, if we can literally hop into the shoes of another and really with deep empathy from their perspective, see how what they did in their mind was the right thing, then suddenly it really brings down the walls. And as you so aptly pointed out, often that doesn't happen until we're literally as close to we can be in their shoes, like I'm now a dad. But if you're not planning on having children, or if that's a long way off, you can still really sort of slide into that awareness. And if you hold the frame, let's assume they were doing it with the highest of intent or with the most positive outcome. How would they be viewing this to believe that it was in my best good? And even going there's like, oh, that's what they might have had to believe. And if I believe that too, would I also have done what they did? Most likely, yes. So then the walls can come down. And I think what you're also tapping into, and you would know this perhaps better than a lot of, I would say, well, let's just say maybe less cultured, and I mean less strongly held together families of culture, and certainly less large families, because your roots of your tree are one, very present, but very wide reaching. Do you, or have you found that the men's work is perhaps even more important for strong cultures or large families because the pressure or the rules feel maybe stricter? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yes. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I guess so. Sort of.
Or is it perhaps
I
even
think.
the opposite? Is it the fact that you've got culture and support and community, so it feels easier? Because I mean, I imagine a solo child in a Anglo-Saxon kind of relationship who doesn't have any aunties or uncles or cousins, isn't seeing a multitude of different family scenarios, different parenting styles. You know how, like, if you're
Yeah.
brought up as an only child, or someone who's only seen their family, and even when you go on a weekend away or a holiday away with another family, and then you're like, wow, they do it differently. And then your perspective opens and opens and opens. And I wonder if in a larger family, whether you'd have more perspectives because you're seeing more ways of doing it, or whether you'd have, I don't know,
I
I'm
definitely
curious
think
because
so.
I'm not one of
No.
culture.
No. I definitely think so. That I feel like I have I guess, a perspective that I've been able to take on was, I guess, I feel like I grew up in a community. That as much as me and my siblings are all alike, we're still very, very different. Very, very different. And what I got to experience was so many different types of people. I didn't have to wait until I got to school and got to be out socializing as an adult. I grew up with that. That lived in my house. It was a very noisy, noisy house. Only now, as adults, do we really, really get along. But as kids, like, it was always sibling rivalry, and we sort of,
Navigating.
the hierarchy, and trying to navigate our way around, getting along. I also grew up next to. There's two families that we grew up with. There was my house, and there was the house that was next door. We grew up with an all-white Australian family, and to this day, we still spend every Christmas, we still birthdays, like Christmas and Easter's, every year we still spend it with them. I guess when we were younger, my parents, they didn't really celebrate Christmases and Easter's or birthdays. But the Australian family that lived next door to us, I guess they sort of saw that, so they started doing it for us. So that's why we spend birthdays and Christmas. And I grew up in a pretty rough upbringing. And I guess that's what it was like back in the 80s and the 90s. And as my family grew further down the line, it started to become my parents, the way they parented my siblings changed. But the Australian family that I grew up next to, I almost liken it to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he got to experience two different fathers. I had, on my side of the family, my side of the fence, it was a bit of a rough upbringing. I jumped the fence. My Australian family that lived next door, it was like sunshine and rainbows. It was all love, and there was no fighting. And I guess what I got to get was a different perspective.
Yes.
I got a different perspective because on my side of the fence, it was pretty rough. On the other side of the fence, it was the polar opposite.
So this is something that I speak about a lot, is growth work, which is what I'm committed to helping people do. Is we grow when we go into new experiences, right? Or where we edge out of our comfort zone. And now, in preparation for our chat today, I was talking to a really amazing male in my life, but not someone. I have a lot of amazing men who are deep in the growth work, very conscious, or whatever phrase you want to use, but they would have no issues coming to a men's gathering, like a men's medicine gathering. And so I do want you to explain what that is, but I also want to share that this other person that I was speaking to, who is really amazing, young, and not really gone deep into the growth work. I said, what would you like to know about men's medicine? And he said, I don't think I'd go to one. I think I'd feel I don't know that I'd be confident enough to go. And so, and I was saying to him, I get that. And that's actually where you'd grow the most if you stepped into this container, because this is the beauty of community and new containers, right? Is just being there brings out a new awareness and an understanding and parts of ourselves that we're not attuned to. So you got that by going next door, and now you're providing that container for men who didn't didn't know that they could express feelings, didn't know that they could let their guard down, didn't know they could, whatever it is. So by bringing this container, you are really gifting the world massive healing. I can see that. I can see the value in it. But can you explain to the listener who's like, well, what do? Do they go take medicine? Like someone who's literally like, what is men's medicine? What are these gatherings? What is this about? Like, paint the picture so that maybe, a man listening might go, actually, I reckon I could go to that, or I could see the benefit, or maybe I could work up to that. And we'll talk about steps maybe to working up to it. But what is it? What is a men's medicine gathering?
I guess what a lot of people don't know, men's medicine was completely organic. Literally, after I'd come up with that idea, I had the list of things that I wanted to do. And we ended up gathering on this one night. And that was the only part that we could actually do. And I guess I was faced with exactly what you just said. How do you get men into a space that they have never been exposed to? They got no idea what any of this stuff is about whatsoever. And we had a dozen men that were supposed to come to my place that night, and it ended up being 6. Literally dropping off like flies. But the 6 of us that were there that night, we had such a phenomenal night that the energy, we still had the group, the group chat for everyone that was in it. That night, the energy from that night was so powerful that it spilled over into the group. And those that didn't come, they felt like they missed out. And I said, look, let's catch up at the end of the month. We'll catch up in 30 days' time. And we caught up for a workout. And those that didn't come, they came on that night. And I said, look, we'll catch up again in a month's time. And then we did our first walk. That walk that we first did, that video went viral. And the video that went viral, it was literally 4 minutes of footage that got turned into a 1-minute video. That 1-minute video is the video that went viral. What we had from that was people asking us to come and walk with them in their cities. So men's medicine, when I set out to do this, like I shared with you before, at the time I was coaching women. I never set out to be in the mental health space or anything like that. I wanted to do something to help the men that were around me to help get out of their own way, because I wanted to enjoy life more. And life's pretty beautiful, but it's really hard to see how beautiful it is when you've got dark clouds weighing you down. That's why I came up with the concept. When we did that walk, I had no idea that it would go viral. Prior to that very first walk, I went out to the same spot this morning. I went for a walk by myself, and I was part of a men's coaching program called Man Cave. And one thing that we had to do was go out into Mother Nature for 30 minutes, once a month, no technology. So I went out to this space by myself once, and I could turn left and I could be there within like 20 minutes, or I could turn right and go on this 17-kilometer walk. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to turn right. About a couple of weeks later, I went into the gym and I ran into a friend that I was formerly, working with, and he looked like he was going through something. I said, bro, you're right. He was like, yeah, cool. And I was like, doesn't look like it. Work, girls. He goes, how'd you know? It can only be a couple of things. Bro, do you want to go for a walk on Wednesday? So we went for that walk, and he said, bro, we need to bring more men on this walk. And I was like, okay, cool. So that's what we did. We did the night at my place. We did the catch up a month later. We did a walk 8 weeks later. So it literally took 8 weeks to finally get a group of men to come on this walk. And that's when it went viral. It was never, men's medicine never started off out as, look, I'm going to start this mental health thing. I want to do that. So that's how it started out. And a lot of people thought that it started out and it's a Polynesian thing or it's a Maori thing, and that this is what these guys do. That is literally 100% organic. To the people that you're talking about, and the majority of the people that come, they all feel the exact same way as the guy that you're talking about. They don't know what they're getting themselves into. They don't know what they're coming to. Look, when we first started, we didn't know what we were doing either. We were just men going on a walk. That's literally what it was.
So do you still walk, or do you, what is it? So if I was a man and I was coming to the next men's medicine event gathering, I would show up, and what would happen and how long would it last? Like, let's paint a picture so they don't think it's something they don't understand.
So when they came on, our walks is basically an outdoor workshop. So on our walks, we do exercises. It's massively built on connection, and breath work is probably the biggest part. There's a lot of breath work that we do on our walk. And I guess the power of breath work, it has the power to dissolve egos. When we're talking about men, ego is everywhere. And I'm not talking about it in the unhealthy way that men are so egotistical. What I'm talking about is it's really hard to work with people when their ego is showing up in front of you. The work
It's
is
just an
behind it.
armor, isn't it? The ego
It
is just
is
an armor of sorts. Yeah.
100%. And you know what? We've all got one. It's part of the human. It's normal. But once you're able to put the ego to the side, now we can see your heart. Now we can actually do the work. And that's the beauty of breathwork. Beauty of breathwork, it has the ability to put the ego to the side, to dissolve the walls, to bring it down, and now we can actually do the work. The work that we do on our walks, that's originally how we first started. It's all connection work, connecting with yourself, connecting with nature, connecting with the other people that are around you as well, touching on mental health as well. We do a bit of unpacking through there as well. And I guess a lot of things that don't usually happen in everyday society, like eye gazing,
So
being able to look
when
another
they're
man in the eyes.
walking, sorry, when you're walking, are they walking and talking? Is someone like just it's you physically
Yeah.
all, but I imagine
So
you
we
can only
walk.
connect to someone next to you. So is there something you've been asked to explore with the person next to you, or do you kind of give them frameworks and then do you pause and as a group do breath work? Or
we stop and we do exercises along the way.
okay,
But
gotcha.
but the walk it's more about the workshop than it is about the walk. The walk's just a part of it. And I guess the difference is most men won't go into a psychologist's room or a counseling room. It's just too invasive. It's too confronting. But when you're out in Mother Nature, it's quite disarming. You're out in Mother Nature. You're out in the freshest of freshest oxygen. You're walking. You're talking. And I guess that environment has the ability for you to just talk freely.
You know, I want to jump in and I actually didn't know your workshops were walking. I haven't seen the viral one that you're talking about. I have seen other videos and I thought it was more breath work and kind of gathered together communities. So I love that it's walking because one of my favorite things to do, particularly to connect to the people I love most, is to walk and talk. Just walk and talk, like really walk and talk. Now, I've done it with my mother since little. We used to walk and talk and walk the dog, partners throughout the years and girlfriends. And I've always said, and it's the same even sometimes driving, like a good deep dive talk when you're driving. I feel like there's something about moving through time and space forward that leaves all the stuff behind you. Like it's the energy and motion, not only lets it out of your body, but now you're through it because you're moving forward. So I don't know if that was conscious or unconscious, but when you're talking, I'm like, this makes so much sense to me. Because you would share something that maybe you wouldn't if you were just sitting there and someone's looking at your face. But when you're walking, it just comes out and you just walk through it. And somatically, we know that if we keep moving, coded as survivable, it's done. Like literally the healing work is done, right? I love this.
Motion moves emotion, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess if you think about it back to your fitness days, your PT days, that you would talk with your clients in between exercises, in between sets. So to go from one exercise to the next one, you would talk between, okay, we finished here, you talk with them while they're training, you'd move along, and you'd move on to the next one. If it was really robotic and sort of like I'm the master and you're the client kind of thing, like people wouldn't hang around long enough. It just wouldn't.
Oh, it's like therapy. PTs are really like therapy.
Exactly. I guess then you take that to the outdoors. So that's basically, I guess how a walk works is that just like you just said then, it's a lot like when you're going on a road trip. You ever notice when you're on a road trip, you have a tendency to have really long, deep chats? Or you're going on a walk along a beach, it takes that confrontation out of it. So yeah, that's sort of what the nature of what happens on a walk. And I guess we did them for so long that, and they've been so powerful that eventually the women were asking for a long, long time. And last year I was very reluctant, I guess, because I wanted to focus on men. This year we decided to change that, and it's been a real blessing to start working with the women as well. But in terms of walks, that's what that's sort of about. We do exercises along the way. There definitely is a difference between going out and back as opposed to doing a loop. When you're doing a loop, you don't feel like, oh, I've got to go back. But if you're doing the out and back, it's like you've got to the destination. There definitely is a difference between not going over the same steps you've already, you've already done. And then we also now have transitioned over to doing workshops as well. So a couples workshop, women's workshop, men's workshop, breath work.
And we'll link to all of these too, Lino. People can go and check it out and definitely get along. Because, you know, any work, guys, that focuses on your growth serves you, serves your family, serves your community, and serves the world, because you and your wholeness is what we need. I wanted to tap on two things that I've been kind of marked in my mind. Breath work. Now, you and I are both, and we kind of talked about this before we jumped on, we've actually both done breath work training through the same organization. But I wanted to ask, when people, I know for myself, when I first stepped into a breath work experience, the very first time was actually really, and I'm not someone who actually associates with anxiety easily. Like, it takes a lot for me to feel a little anxious. And I was quite anxious because it's you're kind of working with that intuitive, innate, natural thing, breath, and you're taking some awareness to it. And I remember being like really stressed out about doing it right, and will I survive it, and will I just drop dead from not breathing, and all these things. Like, all these things, my mind was like really chaotic. And yet I have to say that I feel that breathwork is perhaps the most transformative somatic practice that there is. And this is after having worked with many. And so I love that you're bringing that to men experience, because I think it's an embodied practice that they can, I don't know, like really feel. But I'm curious, how do men relate to breathwork when you first introduce it? And why do you choose to do breathwork as part of the men's medicine modality?
I guess through my own journey, when you were sharing your first experience, I guess because coming from a big family, like if something seems like it makes sense or it feels good or like that would be a good thing, when I did my first NLP course, I'm like, you know what, this is so good, the next one must be better. So I can go do the next one. When I started doing workshops, I guess I felt the same way. So by the time I'd gotten to breath work at this specific workshop, I was really well primed. I was really well primed for it. And that first breathwork experience was what changed everything for me. Through that whole weekend, I guess it was a leadership workshop, and I guess something that I'd learned through my journey was that my voice has the ability to command authority. And I just never realized it until stepping into these spaces, that when I spoke, that I started to notice that my voice had the ability to command attention. So that weekend, what I was experiencing was that people were wanting me to speak. When I got that breathwork experience, I got exactly what I wanted. I was like, this is what I came here for. What I experienced there, I saw my mum. And I'm like, well, this is out of it. Absolutely out of it. I never knew that you could experience that with your breath, and it changed everything for me. So I started to dive more into breath work. And now it's definitely the most powerful tool that we use. In terms of people getting others to do it, getting men to do it, I guess when you're talking about men's medicine, what you're seeing is, and I guess I've asked this question to myself, why us? What makes us different to everything else? And I guess what you're experiencing or what you're seeing is very masculine alpha men doing things you just wouldn't expect them to do. Crying, breath work, being out in Mother Nature, being vulnerable, all of these things you just do not expect from men that look like me, and bigger, very, very big, burly, strong, masculine men. And I guess what you get out of that is permission. If they're going to do it, if they can do it, well, I might give it a try. So I don't have to beg anyone to do it. Basically, whatever I'm sharing, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing.
You lead and they follow. Yes, which makes you the perfect leader in this instance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. And now this was, you perfectly segued me back to something I wanted to scoop back around to, which is this this idea that when you said earlier, much earlier in our conversation about men being, present, and that's really sometimes all they need to be, not provide, not do, but just be present, which is kind of a feminine energy within the masculine or the male embodiment. And what I have found to be true in the work I've done with women is that it's actually quite challenging, or another challenge that layers on top of potentially this conditioning that men have already gotten, is this thing coming from the side where women have kind of tried to become men, themselves, and do everything themselves. And through feminism, we've just taken on more and more and more, and we've become doers. And so, these men who want to protect women, and that, I mean that in I'm a very physically able woman, but I've come to this realization through my own growth and the kind of the breaking free of my perfection prison of being essentially a man in a woman's body, which is what I was raised to be, as strong and tough as the boys. I've come to the realization that actually having a man who can hold space for me and be solid like a rock and be fiery as F and really be a warrior energy, but then drop back into just listening while I be chaotically feminine and at times masculine, and then back into, this energy, like this chaos. If they just hold that steel energy of presence, that's actually the biggest present I can get, is they just, just holding that space. They don't have to fix the thing, because we as women have taken on too many of those roles. And so a lot of the relationship work that I do is actually help women get out of their masculine, because men are trying to hold their masculine, but women are fighting masculine. And as soon as you bring two stick fighters together, you've got conflict that doesn't get resolved very well. But it's both parties kind of coming into this dance, right, within the wholeness of our capacities with more grace. And so I'm just wondering, when you said there, about men being more vulnerable, and there's this energy in our society, and I think it's dissipating, perhaps just the circles I move in, where we're letting go of seeing all of that as a weakness, or, and I hope that continues to happen. But so what's my question? I suppose my question is, from your perspective, having worked with the men's side of things, how has this shown up to be valuable for the families, for the communities, for the world, when men do the work to allow vulnerability, allow emotions, allow talking about things that previously they might have thought weren't safe to do or socially acceptable? How has that affected their lives? What's the tangible benefits that they've talked about receiving from doing the work from your side of the fence?
I share with them that everything is welcome. It's all welcome. Whilst there's positive, we talk about positive emotions, negative emotions, and I'm like, they're just emotions. They're just emotions. And whatever you're experiencing, in real time, that's what's authentic for you. That's what's real for you. It's all welcome. Just like your happiness, your joy, your bliss. Same thing with your anger, sadness, fear, guilt, hurt, all of that stuff. They're just emotions. They come part of being the human. It's human to feel those, experience those emotions. And we talk about here, I guess, here in the office a lot about all these unspoken rules. All these, who came up, and I share this on our walks and our events all the time, who came up with these rules? And I guess as a parent, who taught parents how to be parents? Their parents. The world is taught, and I said this at the couples workshop on Sunday, parents rule the world. Parents teach their kids, and their kids teach their kids what their parents taught them. But where do all these rules come from? Chin up and don't cry, you can't be vulnerable, all of these things. And I share with the men that it's all welcome. It's all welcome. Where it becomes a problem is where you start to pitch a tent and start living there. I'm depressed, where you start to pitch a tent and start living there. That when you're angry and you start to identify with that's who you are. No, it's not. It's all who you are. Just because you've had a really bad experience, it doesn't define the rest of your life. If you're experiencing whatever it is you're experiencing, it's really important for you to honor that, because what you resist persists. And the truth is that, as you shared before, that we are all love and light. And your higher self is always calling you. And that when you deny that, you're denying not just yourself, but you're denying the world. You're denying everyone of your greatness, of your gift, of whatever is unique about you. And the reason why we do the work is because great shit's on the other side. Excuse my language. And all the good stuff is on the other side. So we do this. It's a means to an end, I guess. Yeah, that.
So the benefit, the tangible benefit for them exploring these aspects of themselves and welcoming in the parts that previously were disowned or wronged is, would you say, fulfillment, joy, just freedom?
More
Like what
life.
more,
Freedom. Yes,
yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah.
More life, more freedom. Yep.
That's beautiful.
To be free, to be loved, to experience life, to
be fully
take the guilt and the shame away, all of that stuff. More life, more life, more life, more.
Yeah. And then, so let's say there are men who can't make it to a men's medicine, or who just are like, I hear you, and there's a part of me that wants to be able to go there. I'm just not there yet. What would someone who's listening, or even if there's women listening and they're thinking about their partners, like, what could somebody listening do today, just in a little way? Like, where do we start? Where does a man start to give himself medicine on a daily basis? Like, what would be your top 3 tips to start changing maybe the way they behave on a day-to-day basis? Or where would they start if they weren't coming to a workshop? Where would you suggest they start?
I would start with morning routine. I would start with morning routines. I would start with breath. That just making the effort to give to yourself at the beginning of the day will change the rest of your day. And starting your day with the right foot forward, or just even taking some time to yourself, giving to yourself first, as opposed to just rolling out of bed and just rolling into the day and starting with everyone else's energy. Yes. Literally, just if you're starting the day, just going for a walk, listening to your favorite music or a podcast that you love, maybe something that makes you laugh, that will get the energy moving.
So you're saying for men listening, like really bringing in an internal awareness first. So coming inward first. And then is that because also it brings an intentionality? You know, they get to frame what they want to bring to the world or the way they want to be. Like, why is that so valuable for them on a medicine level? I mean, I agree with morning routines, not disagreeing, but
habits.
Yes.
Habits. Just starting off with some habits. And if there's one habit that you could start off with, start the day with yourself first.
Yeah, love that.
One habit that you could start with before you start attending your notifications, your emails, your partner, or whatever it is. Even if it's 5 minutes, sometimes that's all I've got. Sometimes 5 minutes is all I've got, but it's better than 0.
Yeah.
Giving to yourself first, and it's something we share all the time, is fill your own cup before you give on to others. That way you can, I guess, pour from a full cup or from the overflow. Giving to yourself first, making that a practice will definitely make a difference. Second thing would be breath. Definitely breath. Just don't know, like we started at the beginning, with 3 deep breaths, giving some oxygen to your brain so that you can think a lot more clearly, makes a greater difference than I never would have known that breathwork would have done what it can do. I just wouldn't have. So at the very least, if you can take 3 deep breaths before doing something that you might regret, or if you're feeling yourself a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit of extra oxygen to the brain has a powerful way of changing a lot of things. Something I share with everyone is that what something means to you at the beginning of breath work can mean something completely different at the end of it. And lean into love. The heart always knows. The heart always knows. It never goes wrong. The heart will always know what to do. The answer is always there. So the question is always, what would love do? If you're stuck, if you're struggling, if you don't know something, ask that question. Whatever the answer is to that question, do that.
I love that. They're brilliant. And Lino, do you think too, like there's some healing there around something's coming up there. I just want to ask around like brotherhood. Like you've got 7 brothers. So you were raised with brotherhood. Do you know what I mean? Like, and as you said, conflict and fighting, but that becomes a natural part of that masculine energy force field. But I feel like there's got to be like a synergistic, like a bigger than the individual parts that is that becomes alive in gatherings, because I know it's true when women gather together, and the sisterhood that brings. So, is there something to be said? Like, is there a wound? I know for many women, there are a lot of wounds around relationships to women, because women have competed or been, petty or bitchy or whatever else, growing up. And it was like someone wins and someone loses kind of energy. Is there a similar wound in the brotherhood? Like, is there an aspect of overcoming this competing or comparing element, or is that less tangible for men?
I think it definitely exists. Definitely, community is one of our values, our core values. Our belief is that if you're not connected, then you're the opposite. You're disconnected. So through connection, you have the ability to build community. That connection and community becomes the new culture. That culture of togetherness, of family, of unity. And everyone loves to go to a party. Everyone loves to be part of a gathering. And you know what that feels like. So when you're connecting with others regularly, and you've got yourself your tribe or your community, it provides a great foundation for even better things to happen. So for any men that are listening out there, connecting yourself with the community is like it's vital. It's imperative to making sure that you become whoever you're supposed to become, or whoever is you're supposed to be. That when you're up, people, they can celebrate with you, and when you're down, they're there to support you as well. Life was made to be shared.
And probably one just before we wrap up, one other thought that I try to share with the women in the work that I specifically do with women around my whole womanhood concept. As women, from my perspective, really balance this dance within their masculine and feminine energies, there is often, particularly in the space of reclaiming your feminine energy, out in the world, there's this real talk about addressing the patriarchy, and this conditioning of a world, and I think patriarchy often gets lumped in with man when it's really not that. But I feel that often the energy is like, it's kind of like F the man, we're fighting the men as we reclaim our womanhood. But patriarchy is really just a focus, right? It's a way that the current system of financial focus, and profit over people, and, outcome over really the cost, it has been set up in a way that's made it achievement and less connection focused, less community focused, and more outcome. And that's what really we should be addressing when we talk about the patriarchy. And men and women, I think, have been really adversely affected by this very strong push of the patriarchal kind of awareness over the years. But I'm just wondering, do you find when you're doing men's medicine and all these different labels, which sometimes help, but often I feel don't come up, about patriarchy, masculine, feminine, integrated, embodied, all these things. Do you feel that there's some truth to the fact that as a collective, it is time to shift from this patriarchal energy for all of us, for men and women, and balance it with a little bit more of the matriarch energy, that nurturing energy? And that really it's not that one's better than the other. It's just that we seem so polarized all the time.
I think that, when I see a lot of what you're talking about, I'm like, man, where are their parents? Like, legit, what we've got is too many people with too much money, too much time up their sleeves. And it's like, go, more. And more should equal more, not less. And what we've got is a society of people that have their kids being brought up by daycares, childcares, by other people, and striving to, one thing, a lot of the men, they work really, really hard. And sometimes they come on a walk and they'll be like, I don't know what happened. I just came home and everything was gone. So what I share with them is, so there's levels to this, right? There's the argument that you didn't get along, and then there's the empty house. There are so many levels in between that, like it wasn't just like, oh, you know what, I'm leaving him tomorrow. I'm taking everything. There's so many levels to get to that. And I said, when I asked them, I said, what do you work for? Majority of them, not one single one of them, won't say my family. All of them will say my family. I'm like, okay, cool. So how much time are you spending with that family that you're working for? Not much. I work a lot. I go, so when you set out to work for them, whatever it is you set out to achieve, did you achieve that? I go, yeah, years ago. I was like, so you forgot to go home. What do you mean? I said, well, you already achieved it. You arrived. You just forgot to go home. Everyone forgets to go home. And then they end up going home to an empty house. We got families, we got people that relationships that aren't working out, and their kids are being brought up by someone else, and that becomes society.
Yeah.
Separation,
Soulless
more. Yes, yeah. More for what? You can't take it to the grave.
No.
I've got a friend who's building for his grandkids and his grandkids and his grandkids. And I'm like, you know what? You're actually disabling them.
Yeah.
I've got clients whose kids, some of their kids, they're so well provided for. There's not enough tension or resilience there to stimulate them to do something. Now they're lost. You actually
Preach, brother, preach.
You actually stuffed it up.
100%. Entitlement and complacency does foster a strong spirit. I could not agree more.
What you said before, it's our parents worked hard to provide a better life for their kids, which was us, and then we do the same thing. At some point in time, the goal gets reached. Yeah, my parents left Tonga to come to Australia for a better life. They gave us that better life. I'm giving that better life to my child. She goes to a private school. She wouldn't even know what struggle means.
Yeah.
At some point, I realized, why am I doing this again? Because I wanted to prove something. Did I do that? Yeah, I did. You know what? I don't have to do that anymore. What do I want to do now? And people forget that they've actually done what they wanted to do. Or they forget that now they're just being hoarders. More stuff. And they forget, let's have a look at our backyards. Let's look at our own relationships. Let's look at our own kids.
Yeah.
Come home. It's exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
Come home. What about your family?
This is just, what you're sharing here is true wisdom. And I think that it truly does it takes deep bravery in this society that's wired with that measure of success to recognize that, yes, I've been working for my family, and yet it's a conversation, is it about values and then aligned action? Because if what you're doing is really not fulfilling you and you're missing the mark with the value you're trying to meet, well, that's not success at all. That's a complete waste of your effing life. Whereas if you can come into a rich life, and we only need to look at the wisest of the wisest sages, and anyone who's written a book about, what is it? The regrets of the dying. It's always, I wish I'd had more time with my family. I wish I'd cared less about what other people think, and at what point in your life are you going to wake up to that reality and go, it's now. I'm not going to trade another 20 years, keeping up with the Joneses, measuring myself by an identity that actually doesn't make me happy anyway. Like, why are we not measuring happiness as the measure of success? Because it isn't like, how many people do we know who've got millions and millions of dollars in the bank, millions set up for their kids, and they're miserable, and it's still not enough money anyway. And then there are people who don't have all of those things, but are blissfully happy. So who's actually winning there at the game of life?
Yes, I've got very well off. I know people that are very well off, and their kids are always sick. And I'm like, you have more resources than anyone. If anyone's kids shouldn't be sick, it's yours. But as we know, that emotion is the driver of pretty much everything.
Yes.
They're not sick because they eat so well. There's more to it than this. And I'm like, And it can be, it's not just food.
No.
Even you were talking about before about more. We think about people that think about convenience foods, and what we're talking about really infiltrates down to anything and everything. Faster, more convenience, prep meals, Uber Eats, all of these things. So many kids don't even know where food comes from.
No idea. 100%. They think it comes wrapped in plastic and chopped up. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We really have lost our roots. And I think so much of what you're sharing is bringing men back into themselves. And men really, yes, they are the providers and prevailers and protectors of a family, but that makes them essentially the rock around which everything else. So if they hold if they hold firm, if they hold that rudder steady, that it's like, no, this is what's valuable to us, the rest of the family will tether. So I think that the work that you do is so valuable, because the medicine we're giving the men is the medicine we're giving the family, is the medicine we're giving society, is the medicine the world needs right now, which is come back home to self, and in self find your soul. And that's where your family is. Yeah. That's where everybody.
We're not talking about don't forget your roots. That's no one ever forgets their roots.
No.
But people definitely forget what feels like home.
Yeah.
Coming home. What home actually means. And it's not about the house and the four walls. People that you share your life with, what your true essence is, all of this kind of stuff. And it sounds like all feminine, but I guess you don't work your ass off so that you can enjoy it by yourself.
No.
So all that, this is why the inner work is so important, because that's what makes life beautiful. Yeah.
I love it. So, Lino, if you were going to, and you've shared so much beautiful wisdom today, so thank you. But if we were going to say the rest of the podcast got cut out and we had one soundbite, one sentence from you, or a message in a bottle kind of energy that we could send to everyone in the world, from your experience, your life learnings, the work you've done, what do you feel is like the core message that you're like, hey, team, listen up. This is kind of it in a nutshell. Just remember this.
Family. It's always family. Go home. Love your family. Love your partner. Love your kids. Love your siblings. Love your parents. That's all there is. Family. 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 Family.
And so I want to jump in. Sorry to interrupt. I was just sorry. I just wanted to ask, because I know that there are some people who will listen to this who don't have a great relationship with family. So if when they may hear family's everything and they're like, well, I'm screwed because I don't really have extended family. I don't like my parents. We don't have a good relationship. I'm not in a relationship yet. Like, when you say family to someone like that, what would be your additional layering, or how would you bring them into an awareness that, like, what does that mean to someone who isn't in a good space or family?
You have an opportunity to create your own.
Okay, beautiful.
My best friend has had that exact situation. She's engaged with 2 children, and she was not very close to her family to begin with. Now she is. It plants seeds, I think.
Yeah.
So you have the ability to create your own.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what is the point of all these other people?
That's such a good question. What is the point of all these people on the planet if not to connect with them and create something valuable? Yes, I agree.
Yeah, you can, like, family, it can mean whatever you want it to mean, but you know what it feels like.
Yes.
You know when you're so connected, you're so deeply connected with someone, you love someone so much, they feel like family. We've all got friends that we call family. That's my brother. That's my sister. They're like my brother. They're your people. That's your tribe. Keep those people close.
Yeah, love it. Okay, beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the wisdom that you've shared. And as I said, we'll be linking to all of your websites and your links so everyone can follow along and get along, hopefully. And for women listening, because I know I have a lot of women listening, hold space for your men to be vulnerable, hold space for your men for their emotions. And I've always found in helping women overcome their stuff with men is to visualize, that inner child with their wounds. When that man is doing what he's doing, visualize that young boy inside who's, every father is still a young boy and every mother is still a young girl. And each of us still has those inner children. And maybe just nudge or accidentally leave open the podcast with this, or just straight up tell your hubby or your partner or your boyfriend, why don't you go along and see what that's about? Because that could be the greatest gift that you give them, is sending them to a community of men who can hold them in their manhood. I think that would be not just a gift to you as a partner, but to the world as as a collective. So I encourage you to do that if you're listening today. Lino, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your wisdom. And I really appreciate who you be in the world and the work that you do, because it's just so valuable. So thank you, brother.
Thank you, Marina. Thanks for having us. I really enjoyed this.
All right. Big loves, everyone. And I'll catch you next week. Bye.